A medico-legal report is a detailed assessment of both the account of torture that the person has suffered and then a full physical and psychological examination to see the impact of the torture on them. The doctor will do an examination to record all the marks, scars and lesions on their body as a result of the torture, and a psychological assessment to see the impact of the torture on them now. In the course of my career, I've probably examined well over 1,000 victims of torture and organised violence. In the Sri Lankan survivors of torture that we've been seeing, what really strikes me is the range of different torture methods that they've experienced. So we see evidence not just of blunt force torture, but also of burns with cigarettes, burns with heated metal objects. We see people who've been kept in solitary confinement for a very prolonged period, who've been subjected to asphyxia tortures with plastic bags, with chili or petrol in the plastic, and they've been suspended, often upside down. So there's a whole range of different forms of torture which are repeated over and over in this group. The Istanbul Protocol is the United Nations manual to be used for the investigation and documentation of torture, and we use it extensively in our reports and in training doctors. It sets out all the core forensic medical principles for this type of work. It gives a lot of clinical information about torture and the impact of torture on people. And it has these very important ways in which we can assess the level of consistency of injuries as compared to other possible causes or torture. Other important principles that we use, for example, are the fact that torture may not leave any physical evidence, and it describes why this may be so. Some methods are specifically designed not to leave lasting physical evidence on the person. When I see survivors of sexual violence, one of the big difficulties for them really is in just talking about it at all. As you can imagine, such an awful, shameful, frightening experience is very difficult to talk about to a stranger. And although we know that many of the victims of torture from Sri Lanka that we see will have suffered sexual violence, that's one thing for us to know and quite another for the person to be able to talk about it in any detail. And this is the first thing we have to do, is to establish the trust and rapport that will enable that person to feel safe, that they want to trust a person with this awful experience that they've been through.